everyone, and welcome to the Native Fuse Alliance Student Showcase. This is a seminar series that is sponsored by the NSF Includes Alliance called Broadening Career Pathways in Food, Energy, and Water Systems with and within Native American Communities, otherwise known as the Native Fuse Alliance. My name is Kathy Isaacson, and I'm here from the backbone of the Native Fuse Alliance, which is the American Indian Higher Education Consortium, AHEC. So this Native Fuse Alliance Student Showcase aims to show the outstanding work of our students as they address food, energy, and water challenges in Indigenous communities and build curriculum to support our Native students. In addition, this showcase aims to connect students across the Alliance and provide mentorship and support from the audience who's in attendance. And today is especially a great day because we have two students from two different universities, which really meets the goal of these showcases. So we are just thrilled. And then next week, we have a student from a third university. So life is good. We're so happy to have you both with us today. Our two speakers today are Leke Hutchins from the University of California, Berkeley, and Calder Bethke from the University of Arizona. Each speaker will speak for 15 minutes, followed by a 10-minute dialogue. And we will begin with Leke and end with Calder. So let me introduce our first speaker, Leke Hutchins. Leslie Leke Hutchins is a Kanaki-Awi Native Hawaiian PhD candidate in the Environmental Science, Policy, and Management Department at UC Berkeley. Sorry, that's my dog. His socio-ecological work in his graduate program focuses on Indigenous food and data sovereignty and biodiversity conservation in Hawaii. Specifically, socially, he talks to farmers to understand their motivation for farming, the barriers they face, and the type of impact they have on their respective communities. And ecologically, he utilizes tools from community ecology and genomics to understand how whole communities of insects respond to different levels of crop diversification. His talk today is entitled Arthropods Are Kin: Operationalizing Indigenous Data Sovereignty to Respectfully Utilize Genomic Data from Indigenous Lands. So I would like to welcome you, our first speaker today. Leke.
Awesome. Thank you for that introduction. I'm very excited to be here to speak with you all and share some of the work I'm doing. I was supported by a semester, 2 semesters by Infuse to do this work. So it really allowed me to have the time to dive deep and do the work I wanted to do. Let's see, yeah. Before I start my talk, I just want to share that a lot of my work in this Indigenous data sovereignty space is inspired by both participating in and now helping organize Indigidata, which is an Indigenous data science education workshop that takes place every summer. It's been going on since 2020. And so if students are interested in sort of grounding their data skills in cultural frameworks, this is a workshop to look out for, and I'll put it in the chat after. All right. So yes, really what I'm talking about today is applying Indigenous data sovereignty frameworks to genomic biodiversity data. So biodiversity is at the core of our studies, our ecosystems, and our cultures, right? In terms of the study side, folks look at the composition of communities, the functional traits of species, ecosystems. There's a whole bunch of ecosystem services that folks look at to understand sort of the benefits that the environment provides to humans in that framework. And then culturally, biodiversity has shaped our cultures, and we have shaped biodiversity. And in my field, in the genomics field, we have studied biodiversity traditionally through microscopy, or identifying species or sorting them using a key. And this sort of process, the traditional process, is very time consuming and it has limited depth. You can only get through so many samples, but it has been very important in terms of building reference databases and having accurate IDs for a species by experts in a species group, like a beetle expert. However, the field has really advanced into using metabarcoding and environmental DNA methods. And these methods are just these really sort of quick and cost-effective ways to take a bulk sample from the environment and ID things quickly. For example, in my lab, we collect thousands of insects from different forests and farms. We put them into a tube and we extract their DNA. And we can sort of get through thousands of samples within the time frame of months. While if you're doing it traditionally, it'll take a long time. However, there are still errors that occur all the time, and you can have limited scope in terms of how refined you can get to identifying a species. So most of the time we're operating at, the genus or the order level and not at the species level. And as you can see, there's this headline on the right-hand side talking about there's bug DNA in your tea. So that's sort of on the environmental DNA side, where folks in my lab have bought in tea bags from the store and extracted arthropod, which are insects and spiders, from arthropod DNA from tea bags. And they've been able to identify unique community compositions from different teas from around the world. So it's really just this wide net you can cast in terms of studying biodiversity with these metabarcoding and environmental DNA methods. And at the same time, especially in the biodiversity realm, indigenous lands have become incredibly popular for research. Folks often tout that statistic that 80% of the world's biodiversity is managed by indigenous folks. And this has inspired, tens and tens of researchers to model their research on indigenous lands. But often this research looks very extractive and doesn't work to provide benefit to the community that tends these lands. So my work, in addition to looking at biodiversity, is thinking about how you can conduct these biodiversity studies in a respectful manner that adheres to indigenous data sovereignty principles. And so one of the most prominent indigenous data sovereignty principles out there are the CARE principles. Stephanie Carroll, which is, I feel like you folks all know who Stephanie Carroll is at University of Arizona, and the Global Indigenous Data Alliance. And these principles are really talking about empowering a community to have control over their data, and for the research team to take responsibility and to create collective benefit and have ethical relationships with the community and the data that they're generating. And another tool that's been emerging is through the Local Context Hub, which is created by the Local Context, which is a nonprofit organization run by indigenous folks. And what Local Context has on their hub is a platform where researchers and community members can come together to apply notices and labels to data that are within the community's purview. So here on the left are notices. That's kind of what they look like. They look like, these folded papers. That's a biocultural notice and a traditional knowledge notice. And then here on the right-hand side are the labels, and labels can span a wide array of things from permission. So the community decides who has permission to access certain data, or it's a label describing the cultural significance of a certain species or museum object or whatnot. So this is really, right now, one of the greatest tools that is out there for researchers and community members to sort of work together to sort of create sort of ethical and community guided control over data. And so with all that background, here is my work that I do. So I work on the Big Island of Hawaii on the leeward side. It's primarily where, well, it's where Kona coffee is from. If any of you drink Kona coffee, it's a very famous regional terroir. And what I do is I collect whole insect communities from farms along an intensification gradient. So on the top here, you have simplified farms, which would be like a coffee monoculture, just one crop. And then I sample from diversified farms, and these range from maybe 2 crops all the way up to 15 to 20. And then I also sample from forests as sort of a baseline to understand what communities of insects look like on this side of the island, and to understand what native insects are present in this island, because I'm also very interested in the ability of agroecosystems or agricultural systems to retain native biodiversity. And so here, I'm just on the right, I'm just showing my sampling methods. So here, I beat trees with a stick and I catch all the insects that on a sheet and I suck them into a tube. And then I also collect insects from the leaf litter. And that's what they look like on a petri dish under a microscope. There's just tons and tons of them. And then there are some of the farmers that we work with on the bottom. And so this system is now sort of this matrix of primarily coffee with diversified ag interspersed within it. And diversified ag also includes Hawaiian agroforestry. And Hawaiian agroforestry filled that whole system prior to Western contact. So that's the picture on the left. It's a modeled projection of how much agroforestry was taking place in the Kona field system prior to Western contact, and then sort of the patchwork the landscape has become now. So it's created this really nice natural gradient for me to sample for my project. And so I have this biodiversity side of I'm collecting insects from farms to understand, how the diversity on the farm of the crops might impact the community that's there. But as I was saying, I really wanted to ground it in a backbone of Indigenous data sovereignty. And so I was looking at all the literature and talking to folks, and there's this plethora of frameworks out there that are emerging to sort of apply these Indigenous data sovereignty concepts to your work. However, the actual application part or folks showing how to apply them and go through the framework has been missing. So that's what I attempted to do in this manuscript in revision for molecular ecology resources. So what I'm showing here is the broad buckets of the framework that myself and my research team worked through. So the first one is proactive engagement and benefit sharing and research development and data collection. The next one is data governance and storage. And lastly, research communication and dissemination. And under each one is sort of the questions that we addressed in each section. And we sort of talk about how we met those questions, if we met the framework, or if we sort of had a gap and what we needed to learn from that. But for time's sake, I can't go through this whole framework. So the one part I will be going through is this data governance and storage side. And the questions we asked here is, what is the biocultural and data context of the community? What community data governance structures are in place? And can we operationalize data sovereignty utilizing existing structures? And so the context of sort of data sovereignty and the arthropods themselves, or the insects themselves in Hawaii, are presented here. So on the left is the Kumulipo. So that's an excerpt from the Hawaiian creation story. This is the creation story that links all things in Hawaii to the primordial slime of the earth. So we all come from this dark slime and we all have evolved from it. And there are many lines in the Kumulipo about different types of insects. So here you can see it talks about a wood borer, a caterpillar, a moth, an ant, and a dragonfly, so on. So as you can see, these insects are culturally significant. They're listed in our creation story here, and they're connected to us. And then on the right is the Palakalani Declaration. And this declaration was put out by many members of the Native Hawaiian community in the early 2000s as a response to genetic modification of taro, which is a culturally significant crop and one that we consider to be our elder brother. And so in this declaration, the folks there that were at this convention for this declaration outlined that, anything that comes from Hawaii, anything from our lands and our people is under the purview of our people, and that our people have the right to self-determination, and we have the right to control and understand the data being generated, its consumption, its development, and its utilization. And so this is a clear sign that the community wants indigenous data sovereignty to take place. However, this declaration doesn't necessarily tell you how you meet it, or what avenues you go through, or what people you talk to, or whatnot, to actually meet what the declaration is saying. So that has been a challenge.
We have about two more minutes left, please.
Okay, we're almost there. And so here is how we engaged in data governance and storage. So as I was talking about earlier, with the local context hub, we applied biocultural notices to the data. And so the biocultural notice is this physical thing, like I showed earlier, the BC notice here, but it also can be applied to metadata tables as a URL that links to a researcher profile on the hub website, and then also as this rights identifier column here. We are also challenged in Hawaii by the fact that we do not have a centralized government and we do not have a sort of a committee that is focusing on data governance. So who in the community I would go to discuss these specific data issues is unknown. So what we're doing as a project group is creating a group of people that have knowledge on culture, on insects and whatnot, to make decisions on how this data should be used that's being generated. And in the meantime, while this HUI is making this decision, this group is making these decisions, all the data is being stored on servers owned by the Native Biodata Consortium, which is a Native-led nonprofit in South Dakota that's advancing indigenous data sovereignty in the US. You can check them out there. And lastly, I'll end with what we're seeing is that Hawaiian agroforestry, or Oiwi agroforestry, is driving a unique composition of arthropods or insects, and that it's really exciting to see that there is potential for these systems to house native biodiversity. And thank you, folks.
Yay, thank you so much. How inspiring this research is. So let's take some time for some questions and discussion. Who would like to start?
Well, I can kick it off. Thank you so much for your presentation. I love the little squirrel in your background image that kind of peeks out from time to time. That's really funny. So I'm just curious if you have any stories. I was really interested about the collection of the insects. And do you have any stories of this collection process? Are there any insects that you enjoy working with, some that are difficult? I'd love to hear some about that aspect of your work.
The lab I'm in actually studies spiders specifically. They all, like a lot of my lab mates, study the evolution of spiders in Hawaii. And so when I see spiders out there, I get excited because my lab mates love them. I wouldn't say I'm a spider person, so I don't really know what a lot of them are. And they still do kind of freak me out. But there will be this one family, Tetranatha, that will land, the spider will land on our beading sheets, and they're like the biggest spider we'll see out there most of the times. And they're very quick. So they'll land on the sheet and you're trying to catch them and they'll just dash off. So what you have is like 3 people trying to catch that spider in a tube. And it's always the craziest to catch those. So I always think of them.
Awesome. Thank you.
Another question or comment?
I'm curious about the local context organization and how that has affected the way you do your work. Because it's unclear to me. So would you have to look up your context there to see where the rights are, or you're contributing to that mapping?
So one way this goes is if you're a researcher, you will create an account on that hub. And when you do that, you describe your project, where your project's taking place. And through that description and creating the account, a relevant community can be notified on the hub as well if they have an account. So that's also why you apply like these notices, these biocultural and traditional notices, so that you're acknowledging that that these samples are from indigenous lands. There's also this idea that you are sort of open to engaging in discussions with the community by creating a profile and applying these notices. And so what it does is that I think it really streamlines the process if there is a community that has an account already on the profile, on the hub that you want to work with. So I think there are some tribal nations that have sort of accounts on here, but for me, there is not a sort of Hawaiian community account yet. So we're still in this phase of like trying to notify people and get a community to create an account. But once they do create an account, they can actually apply the labels. That's the second part of that, the labels about permission, who has permission, what the data means culturally. And so it's just a way to streamline this sort of this control of data and a cultural view of data. But there are still lots of sort of kinks to work out.
Interesting. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Is there time for another question? Timberly just messaged me a great question, and she asked, I'm sorry if I joined late, I apologize if the speaker already covered this, but are there cultural considerations in the collection and handling of spiders themselves, including the lab? So are there cultural considerations when you're working with insects? Or?
So one way if I'm trying to understand the question is, well, one way we try to think about when we try to think about environmental DNA is that it's a way to collect data in a culturally sensitive way. So right now we're collecting tons of insects. We're killing tons of insects, and that's not the best thing. So one way we're sort of looking at getting around this, and I'm not presenting on this today, is collecting spider webs from the field, and we're looking to see sort of if spider webs sort of can show what prey community is out there. We're also collecting leaves from different trees and trying to extract insect DNA from the leaves to see if we can see what community is there. So these are ways where we're trying to get around having to kill all these insects and kind of do our work more in these culturally sensitive ways. Cifa Ramos, who is a professor at Northern Arizona University, talks about this in terms of collecting scat from elk instead of going out there and getting blood samples or harming them in such ways. So I think this is sort of a new horizon of looking at eDNA as maybe a culturally sensitive way of collecting data.
Great, thank you. And thanks for the question, Timberly.
Thank you, folks.
We have maybe time for one more quick question or comment.
I can voice my comment, but I hope I'll see you tomorrow, Leke, in the event here on campus. But I think you did a great job in weaving those tradition and other knowledge, academic here. And I hope you have opportunity to present just about these challenges that you gave us a glimpse, but it sounds like there's many more, and questions that arise on the way of your work. I think that's definitely part of the focus of the Alliance, but in general, the work of Indigenous scholars. So it would be great to hear more, and I hope we'll have more opportunities to hear from you on that.
Definitely. I could talk all day about challenges, and it is talked about more in the manuscript. So hopefully, yeah, it passes, it's in revision, and hopefully it will be published in September. So I can share that around too.
That will be great. And also, if you want to share things and collect feedback before it's published, I'm sure there'll be more people who'll be appreciative to read it earlier, but also to offer constructive feedback.
Yeah, that would be great. That'd be great to get feedback. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thanks again, Leke, for such an inspiring piece of research. And yes, the Native Fuse Alliance, we are here. We hope to support and keep connections with you in whatever way you need. So let's move on to our second student, this time from the University of Arizona. Calder, Bethke, graduated from Willamette University with a BA in anthropology. And after working on farms across the Southwest, he served in the Peace Corps for 3 years. And Calder is an IndigiFuse NRT student at the University of Arizona. And he's currently researching food production in arid climates through the Biosystems Engineering Master's Program. And he wants to work with underserved global populations. Calder did a summer workshop on the Navajo Nation with Sixth World Solutions, working on greenhouses with Navajo farmers. Calder likes the outdoors, gardening, and personal development. And Calder's talk today is entitled Economical Smartphone Integrated and Automated High Tunnel Greenhouse Growing System on the Navajo Nation. Calder, 15 minutes for your presentation. Look forward to it.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. Corinne, can you give me sharing? I think before you gave me my phone sharing, but I switched to my computer.
Oh, no worries. So I should maybe. Okay, you should be set.
Great. Okay. Okay. So today, most of this presentation will be on my thesis. A little intro to me. Again, I'm a second-year master's student. I'll be graduating in the summer. My advisor is Dr. Marat Kasira. And I guess first I'm going to talk a little bit about last year as an IndigiFuse program, which is, I think, partly a sponsor in some shape or way or form of this. It's NSF funded. And I'm also right now part of the SRSRN Transforming Rural Urban Systems Trajectories for Sustainability in the Mountain West Transformation Network, which works on things, various sustainable community initiatives regarding food systems and including food security. Last year, as part of IndigiFuse, at the end of May, we went to Dene College to work to help teach modules at their summer internship program titled Teacup. Me, Dr. Kasira, Jameis, Krista, we taught modules on controlled environment agriculture, as well as part of Jameis's project, installed some hydroponic systems at the experimental off-grid greenhouse that's being built there as part of his project. And then as part of IndigiFuse, I did a summer internship at Six World Solutions on the Navajo Nation. Six World Solutions does a lot of things regarding sustainable housing, human rights, food security. I helped more with the food security aspect of things, working on farms, helping gardening. And at one point, we applied for some grant money for IndigiFuse for a solar powered environmental monitoring system for the hoop house or high tunnel greenhouses that are up there. So we started working on that. The PV Warriors group of Rhiannon Ahasteen and Parvana Lee helped with the solar power setup. I'm not as experienced in that. And I designed and made this temperature alarm system, which I then have turned into my thesis project and added automation features. And that's what I'll be talking about now. So food security on the Navajo Nation is a really important issue. For an area greater than the size of Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Vermont combined, there are only 11 grocery stores. I think this might be an old graphic, there might be 12 now. On average, people have to travel over 20 miles to get to the nearest grocery store. And because of that, they'll shop a lot more at convenience stores that have a lot more processed food. It's less healthy and that can lead to health issues. So one potential solution to that is growing local nutritious produce on the Navajo Nation using high tunnel greenhouses. These are really great because they can provide needed wind protection from the harsh weather and to get good leafy greens. I've heard from farmers that use hoop houses you need on the Navajo Nation, you really do need to grow them in these greenhouses. And they can also really help by extending the growing season. There are some challenges with hoop houses though, in that they can overheat. And also it's really easy to underestimate the management needs. This is Jade, and this is our first greenhouse that we're working on. And this is another, each greenhouse we're working on is different, but I'll get more into that later. So I just talked about hoop houses overheating and taking more time to maintain than expected. A solution to that is the installation and automation of exhaust fans for ventilation and drip irrigation for irrigation. But these can be expensive and complex, and they're usually it's only larger growers that use them because of them being expensive and complex. Here's some pictures of us starting work on the system. This is Kern Collymore. He's the co-founder of Six World Solutions. There's Parvana and there's Rhiannon. We're working on setting up some shutters. And this is Parvana setting up a solar power frame. So now I'll talk about the general objectives of the thesis project, which is to demonstrate an economical, smartphone integrated and automated high tunnel greenhouse growing system by controlling exhaust fans and drip irrigation through sensors and microcontrollers. Specific objectives were to, just make sure I'm not going over time, design a monitoring system for environmental controls, design electronics and circuitry systems, develop a code for monitoring and controlling, and implement and evaluate the system performance. So this is a little bit more of an interesting slide, I think. So the greenhouse module is divided into 3 sections. The high tunnel greenhouse module on our left, the middle residence module, and the smartphone. These first two modules are made of microcontrollers, which are basically tiny computers. So in this first controller, this sits in the greenhouse, and it has an LCD display, and it has an air temperature, humidity, and soil moisture sensor, and it has a radio transmitter, and it has a relay that turns on and off the exhaust fans and water pump. From this module, the sensor data is sent via radio to the middle residence module, where it's also displayed on an LCD screen. And this residence module is in the greenhouse owner's own home where they have Wi-Fi. Yeah, the reason why we have this middle module is because many greenhouses aren't necessarily within Wi-Fi range. They're not right next to the house. So that's why we use radio to transmit up to 1,500 feet away. So the greenhouse doesn't have to be right next to the house. From this middle module, it sends that sensor data via Wi-Fi to the smartphone, where we are using the Blink app, which is an existing commercial app that gives you up to 3 months worth of continuous data, which is really great for making decisions based in your greenhouse. And next, I'm going to show a little video of the current demo system that we have running. Just check on slides here. Oops. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yep, can hear you great.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is a quick video I put together this morning. Otherwise, I probably would have chosen a background better than carpet. So on our left is the greenhouse module, the one that was originally on the left in that screen. And then in the middle, we have our residence module. Oh, I'm going to pause it so it catches up so it's not so floppy. And then on our right is our smartphone. This green light here is the temperature sensor. And the thing that I'm holding right now is the soil moisture sensor. Let's try playing it now. So right now the fan is off, and this is to demo the exhaust fan. So we'll be turning it on and off based on soil moisture set points. The fan is being powered by this little solar battery pack, just as a little demo. This battery is charging this microcontroller in the greenhouse, and it's sending that data via radio to this little radio here in this middle module. And you can see the data points here. This is connected to Wi-Fi. It's the residence module. And the sensor data is sent to the smartphone here. Now, right now, I am putting my hand on the temperature sensor to raise the temperature because I have set points where at a certain set point, the smartphone is going to get an alarm and also the fan is going to turn on. And that set point is 76 degrees. So right now you can see it's 76 here and it's 76 there now. And I'm sorry, it's so, I don't know, glitchy. But we just got an alert on the phone saying it's 76 degrees and now the fan is on as well. And so now I'm opening, maybe I can, okay, now it's better. Okay, so the fan is on. I'm gonna pause through this so I don't show you my my login details. And so the Blink app pops up, and this is the interface for the Blink app. It shows you up to 3 months of data, and it's showing that right now the temperature is 75. I thought it was supposed to be, oh, I guess, okay, 75 was our Okay. It's cooling rapidly. So it was 76 for a moment, but because the fan's on, it rapidly cooled it down to it looks like below 75. And in the interface, I had it where it turned off at 75, so the fan is already off. Sorry, that's a little confusing. Let me go back and show you. Yeah, so it briefly, the fans turn on at 76 degrees. When they turn on, they're facing the temperature sensor, so it rapidly cooled down to 75, so they turned off right away. Yeah, that is the quick demo. Go back to my presentation here. Okay, this is a quick snippet of code. One of the benefits of this system is there's no coding involved because all the code has already been done. So the owners just have to use the app, which makes it a lot easier to use. Here's a quick flow chart of the system, but it's basically something that I just went over. This is a picture of the first system. This is the one that's installed in Jaden's greenhouse. Here's the LCD. This is the radio. These are the relays. It's not fully installed because we still are working on the solar power system, but it will be by the end of May. So some advantages of this project are that it's engaging and user-friendly because if, for example, the temperature gets too hot in the greenhouse, a notification will be sent to the smartphone, or for instance, if it gets too cold at night in the winter, notification can be sent. It's also user-friendly because there's no coding involved, it's all through the app. And there's also LCDs at the different modules so that if other members of other family members want to help out, they'll be able to look at those LCD screens. They can also download the app and get notifications as well. So it can be, the work can be shared. It provides long-term data up to 3 months worth, which can be really great for decision-making. So for instance, if it's wintertime and you're adding more insulation, using this, you can find out how cold it's getting at night to find out if your insulation is working well enough for your plants to still survive in. It's affordable. The automation setup that you saw say in the video is less than $200 to make. That doesn't include the solar power system and the fans, but it does include all the microcontrollers in that system. It's less labor intensive and that someone can be looking at their phone to see the environmental conditions instead of checking up on their greenhouse or trying to do other ventilation methods. And also can lead to more productive plants because they're going to get irrigation when they need it and not just when labor is available, as well as it'll give a more stable air temperature, which is better for the plants because they'll be ventilated when they need it, not just when labor, again, is available. And how this system is different from other automated systems. So commercial options remain very expensive and complex still. There are a few companies, a few, I know one major one that are using this kind of technology to make low cost systems using like Arduino, Raspberry Pi. But I think, I think these came out maybe 10, 15 years ago. And there's a lot more hobbyists that are doing it. So it hasn't quite hit the commercial level yet. So the system is a lot less expensive than those commercial systems that are just more expensive. It uses radio transmitters to enable flexibility of the greenhouse location instead of just relying on Wi-Fi. It's integrated with the smartphone app Blink, which again, not my app, but it's a commercial existing app that works great. And it's a unique mix of sensors, microcontrollers, and software. So overall, I think that this can help with this. This may help with food security in the Navajo Nation because it helps a lot with greenhouse management. And I'd like to acknowledge my advisor, Dr. Marat Kassira, my committee members, Dr. Jean Giacomelli and Dr. Hooks, Dr. Chief, Kern Collymore, the co-founder of Six World Solutions, Rain Hastine and Pravana Lee of PV Warriors, and Jaden, Felix, and Nate, who we're working with their greenhouses. And this work is supported by Indigifuse, Intermountain West Transformation Network, the GPSC REAP grants, and the Peace Corps Coverdale Fellowship. And I'd also like to acknowledge the Arduino and microcontroller open source online community for assistance that I received in coding and hardware troubleshooting. Great, thank you very much.
Yay. Thank you, Calder. How exciting. Congratulations on your temperature alarm system. I love it. Okay, we have 10 minutes or so for discussion. Any comments or questions?
I'm happy to kick it off, and thank you so much for your presentation. I love seeing real-time University of Arizona behind you.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So this is more of a general question, but I'm wondering, you know, when you think about your experience with the Peace Corps, the work with IndigiFuse, and the internship with Sixth World Solutions, what do you see as overlaps between those three experiences? And do you have any key takeaways or recommendations about working with community?
Yeah. I guess the first thing that comes to mind is just climate change and food security issues, and that becoming a worse issue in the future, and how it's good to get ahead of the problem. And I think, yeah, working with the community is really important. I think in Peace Corps, it was very important to integrate well with the community in order to have projects be successful. And I think that I wasn't able to integrate as much on the Navajo Nation because it was a shorter time, and I myself, I'm not Indigenous. But the fact that I could partner with Kern, who did have these connections and was in the community, really helped with the project. And also it helps a lot that he's connected in other ways. The greenhouse owners that we're working with, he's connected with them in other ways as well. I think they have some sort of greenhouse creating or installation NGO of sorts. Yeah, off the top of my head, I would say community integration are very important in projects like this.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
I just wanted to say that the video is super helpful because otherwise it stays so abstract, and
Yeah.
even, you know, it's still we're watching a video. It's not that it's interactive, so that, but it still makes a big difference just to see you doing it and see how everything is connected and the impact, how it shows on, and just having this as a mock-up for the big project is also great. A small scale kind of device.
Yeah. When I've practiced presenting, I was thinking, you know, what's it going to be like to people that are viewing this? And to me, it'd be very confusing. So I try and put the video in, so it's a lot easier, small steps, although it's a little bit glitchy of a video, but yeah, I'm glad it was helpful.
Small scale, the fact that you could then put it small scale is super helpful.
Yeah, I didn't see it as confusing at all. I felt it was very compelling, all the way from the urgency of the need through the proposed solution and the little demo. It just, like, my heart was going wild.
Okay, great.
I had a question. This is Carletta. Great presentation, Calder. I also really enjoyed the video, and your project is really interesting and unique. I was wondering how the design process happened. You know, when you identified this challenge and then going into the design, like, what did that process look like with Sixth World Solutions?
Yeah. I think I did go in to the internship hoping I could do something that might involve some sort of small automation system, which I think generally, that's not necessarily the best way to go about things. But I talked with Kern, I talked to the greenhouse owners about it, and that in the past year, two houses to go up have been really successful. But I think this happens with a lot of people who own hoop houses and high tunnel greenhouses that and it can happen with grants as well. It's just that it can require a lot of motivation and extra time that maybe people didn't expect that's required. And so I was just thinking of how can we make that a little easier. And I was talking with Kern and the greenhouse owners, and Kern was suggesting the automation and having it smartphone integrated, which I wasn't going to do, but I had looked into it more, because that makes it so much easier when because then you can, if you have at least internet connection of some sort of Wi-Fi, you can at least leave your home and still have a connection to it. And so I tried investigating that, and that there was a way to do it using this Blink application. But also just, hearing that Navajo Nation is, people can be very family oriented and sharing with work. And so that's where having multiple LCD screens comes in, and being able to have multiple people download the app. I know a lot of people are already using the drip irrigation systems. So it was important for the greenhouse owners to have that included as well as something that could be automated.
Hey, Calder, I don't want to interrupt your train of thought, but Najoni put a question in the chat. I don't think her audio is working, but she's saying, are you going to test this during the summer?
Yes. So it's we hope to have the first greenhouse system installed by the end of May. We have it mostly installed, but we have some delays with the solar power system. And then we also, at that same time, we'll finish the installation of a second greenhouse. With the grant money that we got, we are building 4 systems. So the other systems will have to wait until July and August. But we'll be testing it out. Durability is going to be a big thing, because we don't want to create and install this system and then have it break down 6 months later, which I've heard that is that has happened a lot on the Navajo Nation, and I don't want to add to that. That's also what I'm lucky as well. So,
Great. Najoni says, okay, cool, exciting.
Yeah. I know Brandon and Carvana, they'll get training on the system as well. Just made for troubleshooting. Some parts do not last years and years, like the soil moisture sensor. Luckily, it's like $3 to buy. So including all that information, making sure that it's a system that can last is also very important.
I think we have time for one more comment or question. Okay, well, I again want to thank both of our student presenters today for sharing your work, and for all of you who joined in supporting our students. And please, let's keep in touch. As Torin put there in the chat, on April 20th next week at 1 p.m. Pacific time, we'll hear from Jessica Romber, who's a student at UC Denver. So I love this, that we're spreading it out into another institution. And she's going to speak on, should I read this? Microbial community-driven degradation of 1,4-dioxane at the Lowry Landfill Superfund site. So that sounds really interesting.
And sorry for the typo, it should be Romero.
Oh, okay.
Thank
Jessica
you, Jessica.
Romero. Oh, Jesse. Oh, you're here with us. It's you. Great. Okay, thank you. We look forward to next week. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Nice seeing you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye.